All right, we're gonna go into our meditation. It'll be a briefer one than we're typically used to. So if you want to find a comfortable seat, we have extra cushions to support you. Feel free to move to chairs if that's more comfortable. I invite you to close your eyes, but you can always keep a soft gaze on the floor in front of you if that feels good. And for some, this might be, I know for myself, the first time I've taken maybe a really conscious deep breath. So let's go ahead and take one together in through the nose and out through the mouth. Just feeling how our shoulders drop, how our body responds to that. Go ahead and take another one in through the nose and out through the mouth. Just beginning to settle in this moment, in this body. Start with a brief body scan, starting with the top of the head. I had a friend use this analogy once, but imagine like honey is dripping down from the top of your head down to your body. So feeling the ease and the slowness as it falls down your temples. Relax your jaw. Remove your tongue from the roof of your mouth. Continuing into your neck and your shoulders. Down your hands. Feeling your chest rise and fall with each breath. Releasing any tension in the belly. Soften. Down through the legs, into the feet, feeling your body be held on your cushion. Just continuing to breathe at your own pace, nothing to rush here. There's no goal. Nothing to do or check off a list. Feeling as you breathe in and out. Really arriving in this moment together. And now, similar to our opening prompt, I'm going to have you bring to mind a time when you felt truly cared for or held with compassion. This could be similar to the space or person or animal you shared earlier, or it can be entirely new. And as this person comes to mind, or place, or animal, be aware of what happens in your body as you recall them. How does it feel to have this person come to mind? Does your heart feel warm? Do you feel a sense of ease? Do you feel yourself soften? There's no right or wrong sensation to be had, just noting what that feels like for you. Where in the body are these sensations coming up? Is it in your hands, in your heart, in the belly? Wherever it is, finding that space and just breathing in and out from here, from that warm sensation that's arising. And as we imagine this person, place, or thing that brings a sense of compassion to us, has there ever been a moment with them that has brought difficulty? Has there been an argument? Has the dog eaten your shoe? Whatever the difficulty is, can we imagine in this moment bringing that same compassion that we felt earlier? Can we offer them, or this moment of difficulty, some steadiness, some kindness, or spaciousness? Not trying to fix or change that moment, but simply being with it with compassion. Now, the mind might be busy today, and I wouldn't fault you. Mine typically is too. So as other thoughts come to mind, or if it's hard to focus, that's totally okay. You can always just return to the breath and the body. No need to force anything. And as you return to the breath, offering that compassion, offering yourself some compassion in that moment. Continuing to rest in the felt sense of care, compassion, and connection, wherever and to whomever that might look like for you today. We'll spend the next few minutes in silent practice. The meditation will end with the sound of the bell. Slowly coming back to life. So as I had mentioned, tonight's topic is what Gregory Kramer calls holding with compassion, which is the final step in this 4-part interpersonal dialogue that we've been doing. And over the past 3 weeks, we've practiced pausing and relaxing, opening to others, and speaking the truth. And tonight, we're going to explore how to hold ourselves and others with compassion, especially in moments of difficulty. And I've mentioned this before when we did the Brahma Vihara series, so the heart practices, but compassion is not a passive act. It's something that, while the word and all the loving, like kindness words can feel bubbly, it's not as sentimental softness. It's something that has an energy to it. It has intention. And so that's more of the type of compassion that we're going to be talking about today, especially when it comes to things like clarity and boundaries and deep listening in relationships and interpersonal dialogue. Kramer writes that compassion in dialogue allows us to stay grounded while meeting another fully, creating the conditions for mutual freedom. So the first thing we'll talk about is recognizing that compassion in relation to being active. So again, that like active presence, which includes boundary and care. Then we'll move into how compassion prevents burnout or collapse. So I don't know about some of you, but being a deep feeler myself, sometimes that can mean the burnout in terms of the compassion or care that I try to provide to others. So we want to make sure that we're cultivating some awareness around that and practicing compassion as a shared path of awakening. So caring for the self and others as interdependent. So when intensity arises, a common response can be to contract. So conflict is coming up, uncomfortable conversations, discomfort, and a very common thing might be like a tightening in the body. Like I'll experience it in my chest, usually is the first place that it comes for me, or the belly, or pulling away, distancing yourself, disassociating, or sometimes lashing out like in an emotional response. And while all of those are normal coping mechanisms, especially if we have a past of sort of making ourselves smaller or needing to say less in an effort to resolve whatever might be happening in the moment, we want to practice relaxing the body and listening deeply in an effort to remain present and not shut down. So compassion, and I had mentioned this in our meditation, but compassion is not something we do to fix or just do in agreement of. It's not the solution to a problem. It means holding presence with care. And so we practiced this back in June, like I'd mentioned when we did the heart practices. But compassion, or what's called karuna in Pali, is the practice of compassion for self and others. And this presence can really transform a space between ourselves and others in relational aspects. So personally, I've noticed how recently I've had some difficult conversations lately with a family member, and I've noticed that when I lead with compassion in difficult conversations, or even like redirect to it, because not all conversations start off as pleasant, where I'm like, today is going to start with compassion. But even the redirecting to it can really shift the conversation. And I recognize that the practice of compassion in interpersonal dialogue is there's two people, right? There's two people existing in these conversations. And so the other may not always be practicing it alongside you, but I have the capacity in those moments to choose what my central focus is going to be. It doesn't mean that the conversation ends pleasant or that I feel good after the fact all the time, but it shifts my mindset, it shifts my energy to know that that's where I'm leading from, or that's what I'm offering. Thich Nhat Hanh said, when you understand the suffering of another person, compassion arises. It is not an idea, it is energy that can transform both of you. And I really love this idea of compassion being an energy, not just a verb, not just some sort of action that you take providing compassion to another person, but that there's this like energetic quality to it. And I think you all really spoke to that when we did our prompt about how your spaces or your people or your pets energetically feel for you, that there's something that's happening there that provides safety or comfort or an expanded ability to like be yourself. And so while compassion can provide that, I think it's also providing us the ability to be clear, to provide clarity, and sometimes that means boundaries as well. I'm not sure if you've ever heard the saying that like no is a full sentence. Like, so saying no can be an act of love as a way of protecting our own capacity and honoring another. And that without boundaries and compassion, we can slip into spaces of resentment or exhaustion, feeling like you have to do something. That's often like the space I find myself in as like a deeply caring person. I like feel like I need to do more than anyone's asking of me, but it's like, I don't know, this learned thing that I have. And I'm not sure if anyone else has had this experience, but like when you find yourself in spaces of exhaustion or burnout, especially when it comes to like the compassion realm, I typically find myself saying things that maybe I didn't mean to say, or in a way that I didn't mean to say them, or offering things that I don't have the capacity to give, which means self-sacrificing myself. And so with this practice around compassion and interpersonal dialogue, we want to be aware of that. We want to be present for another, but also present for ourselves. And where are those limits? And so this echoes what the Buddha talked about, which I think I mentioned in my last talk about admirable friendship being the whole of the holy life. So really being earnest in what's coming up in interpersonal dialogue is part of the wisdom in knowing how to lead with compassion in an honest way, which is building trust between us and others. And so while I can reference boundaries in everyday life, I feel like we all have seen or experienced boundaries, as adults, boundaries at work, boundaries with family, friends, loved ones. I feel like the thing I want to highlight most is the boundaries that we set in our own personal meditation practice. So it's not something that really comes to mind first when I think of meditation. Meditation, I think, largely leads with a space to be centered and feel whole or connected spiritually, which it is. But I think it's also a space that we draw boundaries in, right? Like anytime your mind is like really wandering and stories are coming up and you're following them down the rabbit hole while you're like, I'm just supposed to be sitting here breathing right now. She told me not to think of anything or to connect to the breath. Those are boundaries that we're drawing. We're like, okay, thought, I see you. Thank you for that. I'm going to do this right now instead. Or, this can happen in everyday life too. I'm personally a person who can ruminate from time to time. And noticing those patterns and being like, boundary. I appreciate you for what you're trying to do, mind, but not right now. I'm going to be here. I'm going to sit. I'm going to be present with my breath. And so I think that that's something that we can learn to reflect on in those interpersonal relationships that we have, is that we practice it here together in community, that there are boundaries that we maybe unconsciously bring up in our own meditation practice, but that's something that we can take into and off the mat, certainly. And as our meditation practice teaches us, this is something that happens over and over again. It is a practice. It is not something that gets perfected, right? It is something that we're always learning and coming back to. Coming back to my breath, returning to my breath over and over. And this is something we can do with others as well. It's not like I'm going to lead with compassion. Nailed that. Check mark. Off the list. Did it. Done. I'm so good at it now. It's something that I actively have to choose to do and return to over and over again. And the effects come from that, from the returning. Kramer, who wrote the book over here, says, compassion without wisdom easily collapses into exhaustion. And so the wisdom here of knowing yourself, of being present with another to know what compassion looks like in that moment. You know, compassion isn't just one thing. There's no one way of being compassionate with others or with ourselves. It's being present in the moment enough to recognize, what is this moment telling me or teaching me? Maybe some moments it's like, oh yeah, I'm making dinner. I'm going to make 2 dinners and give one to a friend who's sick. But maybe it's like, yeah, I don't only have the effort or energy to like send them a text saying, hope you're well. And that can be good enough for this moment. But we need to cultivate the wisdom of knowing what that is in each moment by being present. And so I know I've mentioned this before in other talks, but in Mahayana Buddhism, the Bodhisattva ideal reminds us that awakening is not for ourselves alone. So to be a Bodhisattva is to know that awakening is through others, through community. And compassion and freedom arise together. So when we listen deeply to another with care, both are liberated in the same measure. We awaken together through compassion. Thich Nhat Hanh teaches, you are in me and I am in you. And holding another with compassion is also holding ourselves. So we talked about a bit about that, I feel like in week 2. And for me, this thought is deeply moving when we awaken together through compassion. It makes me think about what happens both mentally and somatically when I'm met with compassion, which you also all shared similar thoughts or feelings. But something shifts and changes for me. Like when my nervous system is at an all-time high and I receive a hug from someone I love, I instantly feel and like can recognize in my body, my shoulders drop from my ears, that I didn't even know that they were up here the whole time. I feel like I'm taking a deeper breath than I have maybe that whole day. I feel somatically like my body and my energy changing from that act of compassion. And so this idea that that we can cultivate that in relationship with others, that then like transmits into like communities, into other spaces that we even have no connection to, is really powerful for me. This practice of compassion can lead to liberation and freedom for others. And it's not to say that life will always feel this way, or that my nervous system will always be regulated all the time. But it's a powerful image for me to know that through this practice, through compassion for myself, for others, through being present with others' suffering and my own, like how powerful. And like maybe it's this ideal like fantasy thought that like a more compassionate world could end with a freer, liberated one, but like hell, for me personally, I'd rather believe that that's possible, because how beautiful to be able to experience that now, like in this lifetime. And isn't that what the Buddha is trying to show us through this practice, right? Through the practice of compassion, what Gregory Kramer in this book is trying to reveal to us, that with a little bit more practiced compassion in relationship and for ourselves. And it's the one part of the Dharma that really makes me emotional, is that. Gregory Kramer says, the Bodhisattva ideal is enacted not in some distant land, but here in the unfolding of relationship. And Bell Hooks says, when we choose to love, we choose to move against fear, against alienation and separation. The choice to love is a choice to connect, to find ourselves in the other. And so we're going to move into practicing that for ourselves here today, using the things that we've learned about compassion, which is holding presence with care, meaning like we're not changing or fixing ourselves or another, recognizing what may be arising in these moments and setting our own boundaries for what compassion might look like, and holding compassion as sort of our true north towards like a freedom that can be found together. And that through the practice of compassion in our interpersonal dialogue, we are all liberated in some way, even if it's small. All right, we're going to do some dyad practice. So I'm going to start with Andrew, counting off 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, perfect. Counting off to 5.
Yeah.
1,
2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 3, 4.
And so your partners are going to be the same number as you. If you would like to not participate, that's totally fine too. It will be gentle. So what it will be is we'll pair up. One person is going to speak, one person's going to listen. We'll make it short, just 2 minutes each. And while the person is listening, you're going to offer your presence without interruption. You're going to resist the urge to fix or offer solutions or advice. And you're going to resist trying to sort of plan a reply, because, spoiler, there won't be one. And the person who's speaking, offering whatever truth you have to that moment, and hopefully, as a practice, both speaking and listening, supporting each other in that. I'll ring the bell midway through. We'll pause and breathe and relax. So using first week's practice of pausing and reflecting, we'll pause and then return. And if y'all want to find a cozy spot with your partner, feel free to move mats. Pause. I'm going to give the first person a prompt. So the person with the most color, your first prompt is, when have you felt truly held or cared for by another person? Again, maybe doesn't have to be a person, somewhat similar to the beginning prompt, but if you want to expand, again, it's only 2 minutes. We will be pausing halfway through. Don't think too deeply into it, okay? Person who's listening, again, refrain from any sort of response giving, and that can include, maybe as a practice, that can include maybe facial expressions, like this idea that you have to be doing something. Your presence is enough. We'll start with the sound of the bell. I told you it would go fast. So take a moment to just breathe. You can close your eyes if it feels good, but recognizing what's coming up in the body as you reflect on that moment of being the receiver, as being present for someone and their share, and as the speaker, what came up for you energetically or somatically. Where are you feeling it in your body? No right or wrong. Just noticing. And round number 2, you'll have a different prompt. What helps you hold yourself or others with compassion during difficulty? I'll say it one more time. What helps you hold yourself or others with compassion during difficulty? And I tricked you. I gave you 2 minutes, so this person also gets 2 minutes. And it'll start and end at the sound of the bell. Always inconvenient timing, I apologize. All right, just settling one more time, recognizing how did it feel to switch roles, to be the receiver, to be present for someone, sharing about the difficulty. Was it difficult to share about the difficulty? What's coming up? Taking a couple deep breaths. And as this comes to a close, some things that you can take away either to our discussion, which will follow, or just things to reflect on from this practice, or what did you notice in your body while you were listening and speaking? What supported you in staying open and compassionate through this practice? And how did compassion and boundaries support you in receiving from another or sharing, vice versa? All right, thank you for your time.